Welcome to our journey across southeastern Europe in an exceptionally scenic and historic part of the world known as the Balkans. In this four-part series, we'll take you on the road less traveled, where few tourists have tread, a breathtaking 3,000-kilometer trip over land through 7 countries, a dozen UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and some of the most spectacular scenery we've come across in our lives. Former Yugoslav republics of Montenegro, Croatia, Bosnia, and Slovenia. So join us in this first part of our series on the Balkans. I'm David Saldran, and this is Executive Class. Our destination? The Balkans, a mountainous peninsula in southeastern Europe with a history spanning more than 2 millennia. The Balkans is a patchwork of races, cultures, and religions, and though this has fueled violent conflict in the past, including a brutal civil war in the former Yugoslavia as recent as the 1990s, it's this same diversity in such close proximity to each other that gives the region its unmistakable quality and its rich contribution to Europe's history. And so, with bags packed, our seats booked, and a pleasant half-day flight to the region behind us, it's time to begin our Balkan road trip. Day 1. Touchdown in Thessaloniki. We're met at the airport by Stavri Sifligu of Albanian Experience, the tour company that's taking us around the Balkans. Based in Albania, but with an extensive network of local guides, transport options, and travel partners throughout the region, they know the Balkans more than any. We start at the waterfront, the promenade of the old town of Thessaloniki. It's the perfect introduction to the port city that has played a key role in the region's over 2 millennia long history.
Of course, we just arrived and normally everything started from here. Everything arrived from here. Starting from ancient time to the modern time, we see a lot of people coming from east to west, from west to east, and this is the melting point, this is the crossroad of civilization. And this is why this city is so important.
And that's the story of Thessaloniki. It's all about these layers of civilizations and this mix of ethnicities and migrants that have come here.
This is, as you mentioned, this is not just the story of Thessaloniki, this is the story of the Mediterranean. A story which stretches for millennia and a story of people. It's a story of empires, but also common people. People who leave their countries to find a better life. So Thessaloniki is such a city that makes it possible.
In that sense, Thessaloniki is also the story of the Balkans, a region of Europe that has seen wave upon wave of migrants and invaders, and layer upon layer of civilizations. And the many landmarks and ruins of empires you find scattered around the city make you realize that. The equestrian statue of Alexander the Great looms large over the waterfront. Thessaloniki is, after all, the capital of Greek Macedonia, Alexander's home province from where he began his global conquest from. The Greek city takes its name from Princess Thessalonike, the half-sister of Alexander. After the fall of Macedon, the city came under the rule of the Romans. Clearly, this wasn't some remote outpost of empire for them, but a thriving center of commerce and high culture in the region. The Roman Forum, dug up by accident in the 1960s, was once a venue for theatrical performances, gladiator fights, and a gathering place for citizens. The Romans later established Thessaloniki as a capital of its Greek provinces and lavished the city with grand public works and monuments, many still visible in the busy streets of the city. The Arch of Galerius is both a war memorial and communication gateway. It was built to commemorate the Emperor Galerius' victory over the Persians and as a critical link in the Via Ignatia, Rome's pan-Balkan highway. A walk to the old town of Thessaloniki gives you an idea of just how important this city was in every empire it belonged to: Macedonian, Roman, Byzantine, or Ottoman, and Byzantine in particular, where it was known as the first after the first, meaning the first after Constantinople, and the grand Orthodox Christian churches of the city are proof of that. Thessaloniki's golden age was during the Byzantine Empire, where it was second only to Constantinople in terms of size, wealth, and religious significance. The Greek Orthodox Church of St. Demetrius, dedicated to the city's patron saint, is Thessaloniki's most revered religious shrine. The saint's relics lie within. St. Demetrius, along with other Paleo-Christian and Byzantine monuments in Thessaloniki, are collectively listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Thessaloniki was a citadel, a walled city. In fact, you can see parts of the old wall running all the way down to the waterfront from here. Of course, all that is useless today, but at least it's good for one thing, for giving you the absolute best views of the city. It's breathtaking. Lands around the Bosporus Straits. For my first meal in the Balkans, I'm having lunch at a Greek restaurant named Bosporus. I'm told it's a perfect introduction to the cuisine of the region, which was heavily influenced by the Greeks at first and then later by the Ottoman Turks. So let's enjoy. Balkan cuisine was fusion long before the term was fashionable, a reflection of the cooking traditions represented by the layers of civilizations that established themselves in the region: Greek, Roman, Turk, and South Slav, with their common preference for fresh ingredients, olive oil, grilled seafood, and lamb meat. Apart from history and food, the people of the Balkans, like those in Thessaloniki, share a fondness for the outdoors, doing their shopping, dining, and socializing in the open. And that's the beauty of Thessaloniki, a mix of cultures that create a multifaceted identity, epitomized by one of the most famous landmarks of the city. The Rotonda over here is one of the finest examples of the complex layers of history of Thessaloniki, and you don't have to be a historian to even notice it. The circular building at the center is a former Roman it's a secular space. It's only day one, and already we're mesmerized with our first Balkan city of the journey. After the break, follow us to the mountains of Meteora, where ancient monasteries hang perilously from cliffs, and across the border to the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, to bask in the mystic atmosphere of Lake Ohrid. That and more when Executive Class returns. It's day 2 in the Balkans, and we're off to see the cliff-top monasteries of Meteora, which rise above the plains of Thessaly. In the 11th century, monks seeking the ascetic life founded here atop the sandstone pinnacles of Meteora. The word is a Greek term for suspended in the air, which is exactly what these monasteries seem to be. Consider ourselves lucky today because the monasteries of Meteora are now accessible by road. You can even see some tour buses and some cars over there in the distance. Up until the 1920s, the only way up the monastery was by rope or by net or by some crude ladder, which the monks would take away whenever they felt threatened. So yes, we are lucky. So let's enjoy the view. Meteora's Greek Orthodox monasteries were too far, too hard to climb. They were left untouched by the invading Muslim Ottomans in the 16th century and by modernity up until recently. But now that some have opened their doors to the public for a fee, mass tourism is altering the monastic atmosphere irreversibly. The oldest, highest, largest, and most popular of the 6 remaining monasteries is the Great Meteoron, founded in 1340. While the monks have devised innovative ways to get to and from the monastery today, visitors still need to do it the old and hard way, on foot, but it's worth it. The highlight is the Church of the Transfiguration, with its Greek cross shape and octagonal dome. The monastery was where monks lived out their lives. Here they cooked, worked, prayed, and passed away. Perched on the highest pinnacle, the Great Meteoron also offers the broadest views of the other monasteries, the Pindus Mountains, and the plains of Thessaly. Because of the secretive monastic society that lives here and the eerie landscape, Meteora has been chosen as a backdrop for pop cultural creations as varied as the Game of Thrones to James Bond. And that explains why there's so many visitors here. But there are still a few monasteries where you can find some peace and quiet. Summer is when tourism peaks, but at daybreak or off-season, you can still see aspects of monastic life little changed from the last century. Despite the new access roads and steps that were built leading to the different monasteries of Meteora, some of these are harder to reach on foot than others, and therefore more isolated and also more peaceful. One of these is the monastery of St. Trinity. This is what monasteries were like before they opened up to the public. These monasteries have outlived wars and calamities. I can only hope they can also outlast the relentless crush of humanity. The monasteries don't serve meals or take in overnight guests, at least not yet. But you can make the nearby town of Kalambaka your base when visiting. There's not much to do here, but the views of the pinnacles from ground level are amazing. It's also a great place to discover the fresh produce of Thessaly, which represents 40% of agriculture in Greece. And try the local cuisine, known for olive oil, sheep's cheese, and something we'll be seeing a lot more of throughout the Balkans: roast and grilled meat. Goodbye to Meteora as we take the road to Macedonia. From northern Greece, or what the Greeks call Macedonia, we're on our way now across the border to the Republic of Macedonia. I know it sounds really confusing. That's why we're making a stop over here in this village called Vergina. You see, this place explains the history of Macedonia and the Macedonian Empire. Now, down the slope over here, you'll see the remains of a palace of Macedonian kings, and further down, the tombs of the likes of Philip II, you know, the father of Alexander the Great. Vergina is a current name for Aegae, the first capital of Macedon before Alexander the Great ruled from Pella. In 1917, archaeologists discovered royal tombs underneath these mounds, including the tomb of King Philip II, Alexander's father. It's now a museum and UNESCO World Heritage Site, and for people who claim Macedonian ancestry, the place continues to fuel debate over who has the right to be called one. From Greek Macedonia, we cross the border to a country with a similar name, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. We arrive at the lakeside district of Ohrid, stopping by the 10th century Orthodox Church and Monastery of St. Nome at night. It's one of many holy sites in Ohrid overlooking the lake. That combination of spirituality and natural beauty that has drawn pilgrims and travelers to this place, along with their legendary hospitality. Macedonians are well known in the former Yugoslavia for their musical talent as well as for their cooking skills. The popular Belvedere restaurant provides a perfect introduction to authentic Macedonian and Southern Balkan specialties in a traditional setting. Dairy and freshwater fish figure prominently, as does pljeskavica, the popular Balkan specialty. It's grilled ground meat like a burger, but from a mix of lamb, beef, and pork, and stuffed with garlic, paprika, onions, and cheese. Altogether, it's a fantastic, and with live music, a fun-filled meal. We've covered 2 countries in 2 days so far. Up next, we'll explore Ohrid's lakeside attractions and cross the border to our 3rd country on this Balkan road trip. A look at the once reclusive Albania when executive class returns. It's a rainy morning in Ohrid with a blanket of mist that obscures the legendary beauty of the lake. Lake Ohrid is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and in better weather, the city is teeming with tourists who come to visit one of Europe's oldest and deepest lakes, and the many historic monuments and sacred sites on the shore. Despite the rain, we're staying a while here in the city of Ohrid, located along the beautiful Lake Ohrid. It's a popular tourist destination, especially among locals, but outside of that, few have heard of this place. And that's why I'm here to meet with a local expert who'll tell me why this was once one of the most influential and powerful cities of the Byzantine Empire. We agreed to meet at the picturesque St. John at Kaneo, a 13th century Macedonian Orthodox church dedicated to John the Evangelist, built on a cliff by the lake. Just look at that, what a view. Not even the rain can take the beauty away. Ah, Stavri, there you are. Stavri, my Albanian travel companion, introduces me to one of Ohrid's foremost Byzantine art and church historians.
Clement, nice to meet you. Welcome to Ohrid. Ohrid had a very glorious history. It is a place with continuous existence of civilization since the 5th millennium BC.
From the 6th century AD to the late 18th, the Archbishopric of Ohrid was an ecclesiastical powerhouse, a 3rd force after the popes of Rome and the patriarchs of the East. So we're standing here at one of the many Byzantine churches in the city. So the church and the city, inseparable, right?
Yes, once Ohrid had, according to the legend, 365 churches. Wow. One church for each day of the year. At the moment, there are around 47 active churches within the old part on the hill.
Like most of the Balkans, Macedonia was absorbed into the growing Muslim Ottoman Empire, and some of the Christian churches like St. Sophia were converted into mosques. but because the Ottomans hardly altered the structures and merely covered some frescoes with a thin layer of paint. Restoring churches after the Turks withdrew from the area was never too difficult. The 13th century Church of Mary Peribleptos contains one of Ohrid's most magnificent and well-preserved frescoes, part of the so-called Paleologos Renaissance, the Byzantine equivalent of the Medicis of Florence. From the courtyard of the church, you can see the medieval castle walls of Ohrid, a flag of the now independent country, the symbol of Macedonia, with its complex identity intertwined with Bulgarian, Ottoman, Albanian, Serb, and Greek.
How do you feel, and how do Macedonians feel about this kind of tug of war in the world community about who deserves to be called Macedonia?
You know, our ancestors, my forefathers, they declared themselves Macedonians. It's outrageous someone to change your name. We will never be pushed by any kind of pressure to do that, to step back, because the truth is that we are Macedonians and we are living in the country which is called Republic of Macedonia.
And that's why the Macedonian flag flies proudly over this land.
Yeah, symbolizing the sun, and the background, the red color, which is the blood that was shed for us to live a free life.
The debate over the true Macedonia reflects a contentious and often violent narrative of the Balkans, where a history of shifting borders and forced migrations has fueled ethnic tensions and full-scale wars as recent as the 1980s. Though tensions rise every now and then, borders have never been as open and foreigners as welcome as they are today. We're driving along the route of the ancient Roman Via Egnatia into what was, from the 1950s until the 80s, the most reclusive and isolated state in Europe, Albania. These bunkers, part of over 700,000 across the country, were built by the paranoid Stalinist regime of Enver Hoxha to defend Albania from the imaginary threat of enemies. It's mid-afternoon by the time we reach the capital, Tirana. Albania is still among the poorest in Europe, but the capital, with its growing middle class, is a different story. After more than 3 decades of isolation, Tirana is making up for lost time with a building boom and an ambitious urban renewal program.
Just like the weather we had all day, Tirana was once a dull, dark, and gray city, especially during its darkest years of dictatorship. And just like the weather right now, all that is changing. This is a new face of Tirana, a new face of the city, lively and colorful.
A good place to witness this transformation is at Paza Iri, the newly converted market square with its farmers market, modern cafes, art installations, and brightly colored facades painted in ethnic Albanian patterns. The capital is modernizing rapidly, but the past survives in the city.
This is the oldest surviving building in Tirana. It's the main mosque. Albania is one of 2 Muslim-dominated countries we're visiting on this trip. But don't get the wrong idea, because after communism, religion is expressed very differently here.
Islam is as liberal as it gets here, and most don't mind tourists inside their mosques. Religion, like other basic rights, were banned during the 40-year communist regime, and though practiced again, the fervor is missing.
Believe it or not, one of the most popular attractions for visitors in Tirana are these bunkers over here. There are over 750,000 of them all over the country, and we saw some of these bunkers on the way to the city. You know, it's something most Albanians would rather forget about, but it's extremely popular with tourists.
Bunk R2 is a museum dedicated to Albania's 40-year dictatorship and the struggle to resist it. It occupies a secret underground bunker complex built in case of nuclear attack. The chambers give you a glimpse of life under Big Brother, where basic rights were suppressed, citizens spied on, and everyone was a suspect. Though vestiges of the past remain, the new generation of Albanians and the young of the Balkans are reshaping their region and embracing change.
I must say I'm really impressed with my journey through the Balkans so far, but even I have to admit, given all the negative stereotypes about the place, it must be a challenge to promote the Balkans to the rest of the world. Well, that's why we're here, to talk to the owner of one company that's promoting the place.
Gazi Hakja's travel company, Albanian Experience Landways, is one of the few local players with a global footprint. His business is booming, especially in Asia, thanks to travelers seeking the unique destinations and authentic experiences captured in his tours of the Balkans.
It's like off the beaten path. Yeah. So when people come here, everything positive is a highlight. In a nutshell, these countries offer a combination of great hospitality, super food, organic food and great landscapes, a good hotel scene, and a lot of history and UNESCO sites. So you have a lot of UNESCO sites dotted all over, and the very small areas of these countries makes it very possible for people to travel many countries within a few days. But I think the highlight is the people itself.
Welcome to...
It's hospitality, history, and scenery that's captivating me. And to think this is just the start of the journey.
And that's all for our first part of our series on the Balkans. Join us again next time as we drive up the Adriatic coast. I'm David Sadran. Thanks for watching.